Relations International. It is wonderful to be able to be here together. But let me also welcome all those that are watching the live stream of this opening session online. Our colleagues, Cambodian colleagues, have prepared a wonderful traditional cultural program to welcome you to the 9th EIAP Regional Conference in Siem Reap, which is Apsara Dance performed by the local artists. The Apsara Dance is a traditional dance of the Kingdom of Cambodia, dating back to the 7th century. This dance is an essential part of the Khmer culture. It finds its roots both Hindu and Buddhist mythologies. You will see images of Apsaras, and this dance is depicted in Angkor Wat Temple, which we hope you will find time to visit. Though this unique dance style was once reserved only for the royal family and their honored guests to admire, in recent decades it has become so world-renowned and symbolic of Khmer culture that the Royal Ballet of Cambodia was designated by UNESCO as Intangible Cultural Heritage in 2003. In 2003, UNESCO recognized the Apsara dance as a masterpiece of oral and intangible heritage of humanity. Let us witness a piece of Khmer culture in the form of Apsara dance. And once the dancers finish their performance, they will descend the stage and walk past the aisles, throwing flowers to the conference participants as a sign of blessing, and then leave the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the artists with a round of applause. What a wonderful performance. Let us give another big round of applause to the artists. Brother and sister, now after this wonderful performance, now let's get started with the formal proceeding of the opening ceremony. Join me as I invite Mr. Masaki Okajiwa, the chairperson of EI Asia Pacific Regional Committee, to deliver his opening address. Mr. Okajiwa has committed himself to achieve quality educations for all through social dialogue, representing teaching professionals. He believes that it is the most important for educators to voluntarily research on teaching as professional, pursuing autonomy for educators in his life work. Mr. Okajima, the stage is yours.
Good morning to Sister Susan, Sister Okchayabi, and Brother David, Brother Graham, Yoshida-san, all friends and colleagues. I'm Masaki Okajima, the chair of EIAP Regional Committee. I welcome all of you to the 9th EIAP Regional Conference on the theme of rebuilding the Asian Pacific. Educators and their unions at forefront towards a sustainable future. It is my great pleasure to see you again in person. It has been 5 years since the last conference in 2017, Kathmandu, Nepal. Due to the pandemic, we had to postpone this conference for a year. First of all, I would like to celebrate this opportunity with all of you to able to gather here today. I was very much looking forward to seeing you again and interact with you. Pandemic has changed our lives dramatically. One of the big changes is digitalization of communication. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we have tried our best to connect with our members using online platforms and function our campaigns using social media. Through try and error, we have found some advantages and benefits of the new technologies. For example, those who could not participate in union activities in past, due to family responsibilities, now can enjoy online meetings. So we know in-person meetings are not always the answer. However, at the same time, we know that online platforms and digitalization cannot replace face-to-face communication, in-person meetings, and real connection. Certainly, digitalization and new technologies have been changing in the world and influencing the future of work, including education. We cannot deny it. However, as you know, the COVID has exploded and exacerbated inequities and inequalities of education systems. Pandemic showed how students from marginalized backgrounds can be left behind. They tend to have more limited access to digital learning resources at home. And they often have less support from their families. We have faced those disadvantages first to ensure quality education for all students. Second, online education cannot fully cover the benefits of school education. Schools are crucial to support children to make emotional, social, dental, and physical development. For some marginalized students, school sometimes means their lifeline. To survive and connect with the community, one of our essential roles as teachers and educational support personnel is to secure the well-being of our students. The pandemic has also exacerbated the workload of teachers and educational support personnel at school. Before the pandemic, lack of workforce in education sector was common challenges in the world. Teachers were already working long hours, not only for teaching and preparing classes, but also for paperwork, among others. During the pandemic, teachers and educational support personnel have more burden to protect their students from the COVID and need to prepare class curriculums using unfamiliar online platforms with less support. Their wages, working conditions are essential to provide quality education for all. Their well-being is directly connected with the well-being of students. We must have social dialogues and communications with not only the government and municipalities, but also school communities and other stakeholders to build mutual understanding and mobilize support and cooperation to achieve quality education for all. In order to secure quality education for all, it is also important for teachers and educational support personnel to take the initiative in improving their knowledge and skills. Japan Teachers Union holds its annual conference on educational research at national level to provide opportunities for professional development while exchanging educational practice with colleagues. There are many education unions providing opportunities of capacity building for union members. As teachers and educational support personnel, and also unionists, I'm very much looking forward to your active participation and learning from you at the 9th EIAP Regional Conference. Thank you. for your kind attention.
Thank you, Mr. Okajima. I would now invite someone who does not need any introduction anymore. She is someone who is from our region but is the voice of 32 million members of Education International globally. Ms. Susan Hopgood, the President of Education International, please be on stage to deliver the opening remarks.
Thank you for the welcome and good morning, everyone. Isn't it just so wonderful to be here in person after such a long time? And also, hello to all of those people who are watching us online. When we were last together as a regional conference in 2017 in Kathmandu, our theme and our task was transforming Asia-Pacific as education unions, driving the 2030 agenda. Little did we know how terribly that transformative agenda would be decimated by a global pandemic. And so here we are today in Siem Reap, discussing strategies to pick up the pieces and rebuild the Asia-Pacific with educators and their unions working towards a sustainable future. Colleagues, one of the best things about coming home to our regional conference at this point of the calendar is that it follows directly the UN General Assembly. And because of that, I'm able to share a very unique perspective on the global challenges facing our profession, our students, and our unions. Especially this year, for the first time in history, world leaders came together at the UN to face the reality of the global education crisis. A gathering organised by the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called the Transforming Education Summit, or TES. The TES brought together heads of state to reverse the impact of COVID on the achievement of Sustainable Development Goal 4 on quality education for all. We know what a challenge this is. Education has been severely affected by the pandemic. It has deepened and exacerbated inequities and led to cuts to education budgets globally. Did the TES resolve these issues? Of course not. But did it advance critical issues that matter to us as teachers? I believe the answer is yes. First, we've never had so many teachers and teacher unions leaders' voices raised and heard at a UN gathering. The very sharp focus on global recovery from the worst of COVID included a unique airing of teacher perspectives. Increasingly, the critical role of teachers in policy development is being acknowledged. The facts were inescapable. Reports and studies during the crisis have been consistent. Education systems that worked in dialogue with teachers and their organisations were the most successful in keeping teachers and students safe and ensuring the continuity of education. In countries where this was not the case, the opposite happened. And that's not news to us. Of course, the distance between promising practices and widespread policy is long. But perhaps for the first time ever in any international meeting with a spectrum of education stakeholders, one thing seems undisputed. That is, that success in achieving SDG 4 depends on the ability of learners and their parents, of policymakers and entire communities to engage in dialogue with teachers, to build consensus, alliances and partnerships to ensure that the right to education is recognised, defended and realised globally. The second thing worth noting to you regards the status of teachers. Simply put, there can be no transformation of education without teachers. The world heard much at the UN about the status of teachers, that we are emerging slowly from an era of COVID with a teaching profession that is overworked, underpaid and undervalued. In too many countries, low salaries, poor working conditions, workload intensification, restrictions on professional autonomy, and insufficient support and recognition have combined to decrease teacher wellbeing, increase attrition rates, and make the profession unattractive to young people. Important evidence behind our advocacy on the world stage comes from right here in this region, and the excellent research led by Anand Singh and our Asia Pacific office with the ILO this year. Nearly a quarter of the teachers in 42 member organisations across 22 countries reported an increase in workload and a reduction in their compensation, all at a time of increased COVID-related out-of-pocket expenses to us as teachers. While working harder and longer for sometimes less money, nearly half the teachers were under severe stress regarding the future of their careers. Most teachers globally were forced to adapt to distant learning without sufficient support. This is another critical issue in our profession that was widely discussed at the UN sessions: the entire landscape of education technology and the future of work. Again, the regional survey illustrated the challenges very well. Nearly half of the respondent teachers in our region shifted to an entirely online mode of work and a combination of online and remote work for an additional 21%, with many of them often using their own personal devices. We believe technology has the potential to help free up a teacher's time to focus on supporting the diverse learning needs of our students, making more equitable outcomes achievable. But we know teachers around the world went into the pandemic with a serious shortage of professional development and training around digital technologies. And more than that, the education systems where we work largely have no expertise or track record with regard to technology. At the TES, EdTech was a special focus. At one session, it was suggested that we should all join together to, quote, advance work in 3 specific areas of implementation: content, capacity, and connectivity, to make digital teaching and learning a universally accessible and reliable pillar of holistic educational experiences, end quote. Those 3 C's, content, capacity, and connectivity, are very important. But as I said in my response, there needs to be a 4th C, and that is credibility. While millions of teachers have turned themselves into power users of various hardware and software in the last several years, education technology at scale remains largely untested, unregulated, and unproven. If indeed our objective is SDG 4, free, quality public education for every student, we need to look past the anecdotes and the marketing and talk about the path and potential of EdTech in our classrooms. I suggested this as a starting point. Value teachers. Bring our profession, education systems, and entrepreneurs into collaborative relationships instead of the current scenario of marketing, deploying, and hoping for the best. Of course, the notion that technology is a magic bullet is misguided at best. It simply opens the door for profit-driven EdTech companies more interested in data mining and their bottom line than in quality education for all. We know an increasing number of EdTech companies are moving into curriculum development, selling packages of content to accompany devices, through online courses, digitally enhanced private tutoring, and even social media platforms. Schools will be increasingly dependent on digital infrastructure provided by giant technology corporations and on resources, tools, and platforms provided by the EdTech industry. And we say nothing about teachers without teachers. It's critical that technologies be analysed and developed with teachers, and that the positive and negative effects of specific interventions be well understood. Let's also make sure that equity is embodied in SDG 4 is evident in the technology we use for every student, everywhere. And this begins by committing ourselves to eliminating the fundamental inequity of access to the internet that shuts millions out of sustainable development more broadly, including education. This is how we make transformation real. All of these issues were elevated even further by the announcement that a United Nations Commission on the Teaching Profession will be created in the coming months. The details have yet to be developed, but the responsiveness of the Secretary-General and Deputy Secretary-General Amina Mohammed of the UN to the world's teachers through EI is gratifying. We believe this high-level commission and its recommendations are an opportunity to gather not only research and pedagogical evidence and experience, but also the voices of our profession and weave them into transformational policies backed by political will into a new and concrete social contract. Colleagues, of course, transforming education will take more than a commission. It will take new and consistent resources, the proper financing of a public sector with education at the foundation, public education at the foundation. This is perhaps the most severe challenge to our profession as teachers, our responsibilities as unionists, and our mandates as leaders. Across the globe, governments are failing their people with regard to the basics, to collect taxes, to provide infrastructure, to promote equity and equal rights, to invest in their own people, to meet their funding commitments to education. Right now, 2/3 of low and middle income countries have cut their education budgets at a time when the world faces a $148 billion annual financing gap to achieve SDG 4. And around the world, many education systems are hanging by a thread. Schools are under attack, communities are displaced, and in some places, teachers have not been paid for months. Right now, we need 69 million more colleagues in the teaching profession if we are going to achieve SDG 4 by 2030. We'll not be able to recruit or retain these numbers of professional teachers unless all teachers have decent salaries, recognition, professional autonomy, support, quality professional development, and the opportunity to take part in policy decision-making. Teacher shortages, precarious working conditions, as well as an increasing push to privatise education, is threatening the rights of teachers and students alike. We need more sustainable and equitable education financing solutions for education systems that invest in teacher training and continuous professional development. We need governments to take bold action and respond to the call made by the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres in his vision statement to invest more equitably and more efficiently in education. The call to action urges more international support for national financing efforts, including through action on tax reforms, debt relief, and an end to public wage bill constraints, a special drawing rights and new funding formulae. This is breakthrough for us all, and our civil society allies fighting to prioritise domestic funding for education. Changing this narrative is one of the key reasons we need a campaign on investing in teachers. We'll hear more about that from our General Secretary later this morning. Teachers are the beating heart of education. Without investing in their quality working conditions, training and well-being, quality public education for all will never be possible. Meanwhile, many governments have resorted to recruiting unqualified teachers with substandard compensation. We've seen this, for example, in India, where our union colleagues have mobilised against a pension scheme that seriously reduces benefits to newly hired teachers. And our colleagues in Nepal tell us that 50,000 teachers lost their jobs during the pandemic and say that the government's lack of commitment to education as a public good has opened the door to further privatisation. These are the messages we deliver to the UN, because it is not enough for us to know. What we know must be communicated to the world. And why is this so urgent? Because our work not only impacts on students' whole lives, our work has the potential to change society. We need transformation in education because fulfilling the right to quality education for every child is the key to unlocking progress on all other sustainable development goals. Education is key to climate education, to climate action, gender equality, peaceful communities, and more. This includes a global goal that is especially important to our region, and that is the fight against climate change. There is no need with this audience to generate awareness and concern about climate change. Each of us who calls this region our home know the immediate and material human cost of climate change to our families and our neighbours. No society or region has been so scarred by more frequent and intense droughts, wildfires, storms and floods. Climate education based on science with a civic action focus should be as fundamental as teaching reading and writing. The fight against climate change must have an education face and a teacher's voice in every area of the world. As part of its Teach for the Planet campaign, Education International has called for quality climate education for all and has put forward the teaching profession's vision on what it would take to achieve it. Teacher training and support for the profession are essential to delivering quality climate education rooted in science and with a civic action focus. Our special focus, or one special focus of the campaign, is girls' education. The data shows that educated women and girls who are involved in decision-making are a formidable force for change. They help their families and communities build resilience to economic and climate shocks. They accelerate recovery from climate catastrophes and adaptation to the effects of climate change. But make no mistake, colleagues, empowering teachers and students on subjects like sustainable development, global citizenship, and gender equity is very often a bold move, an act of bravery and defiance. There is a fundamental reason that schools, students and teachers and their unions are targeted in Afghanistan, in Russia and Ukraine, in Nigeria and Iran, Myanmar, Hong Kong, Nepal and Mongolia, in Australia and the United States, and so many other places. And on this point, let me say that we call for the immediate release of all political prisoners in Myanmar. 60 trade unionists have been unjustly incarcerated by the military junta since its coup in 2021. That's right, 2021, after decades of fighting for democracy, here we are again. EI has also joined the call to the United Nations to recognise Myanmar's national unity government as the true democratic government of the Myanmar people until the democratically elected government is reinstated. And colleagues, we are here in Cambodia, where repression of independent trade unions is all too common. Members of our organisation in Cambodia, CETA, have been continually harassed for exercising their most basic trade union rights. Rong Chun, former president of CETA, is with us today, having only recently been released from jail after an international campaign against his warrantless arrest. Rong Chun, could you please stand and be recognised by the conference? Clearly, when you see public education as a public good and a human right, and you organise collectively around the principles of quality, fairness and equity, you do make some enemies. As leaders in our unions, our voices matter, and they must be raised. We must confidently realise our own powerful presence, our unique credibility to organise, to mobilise, to fight disinformation and all anti-democratic forces. We must be recognised as the leaders in the movement for transformation, not just of education, but of our societies, of opportunity for our young people, and a sustainable environment for all. This means we must be recognised as the enemies of authoritarians who want the future to be less democratic, less politically literate, and more privately owned and controlled. When we do that, we are mobilising not only our members and organisations, but we are also joining and leading coalitions that make our majority voice even stronger on every issue, in every forum possible. This is our greatest challenge, colleagues, and this is our greatest opportunity. I wish you a successful regional conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Susan Hopgood, for the opening remarks. We would now invite Sister Auk Chayafi, the President of Cambodia Independent Teachers Associations, the host for this conference, to deliver a welcome remark.
Some group ថ្នាក់ដឹកនាំអង្គការអប់រំអន្តរជាតិ Some group ប្រតិភូចូលរួមអង្គសន្និសីទ Some group អង្គសន្និសីទទាំងមូល
Chairperson, guest, delegate and observer to the 9th Education International Asian Pacific Regional Conference. Ladies and gentlemen, brother and sister.
តាមនាមសមាគមគ្រូបង្រៀនកម្ពុជាឯករាជ្យ នាងខ្ញុំអុកឆាយាវី មានកិត្តិយសស្វាគមន៍យ៉ាងកក់ក្ដៅចំពោះវត្តមានឯកឧត្តមអស់លោកស្រីលោកជំទាវដែលចូលរួមក្នុងអង្គសន្និសីទអប់រំអន្តរជាតិនៅពេលនេះដែលរៀបចំឡើងដោយនៅលើទឹកដីអង្គររមណីយដ្ឋានទេសចរប្រវត្តិសាស្ត្រដ៏ល្បីល្បាញរបស់ប្រទេសកម្ពុជា
It is my absolute honor and pleasure to welcome you all to this significant conference in Siem Reap, Cambodia. We wish you all a success conference.
សន្និសីទនេះជាប្រវត្តិសាស្ត្រសម្រាប់កម្ពុជាដែលប្រព្រឹត្តទៅចាប់ពីថ្ងៃទី18ដល់ថ្ងៃទី20ខែតុលាឆ្នាំ2022
As the delegates to the conference, we look forward to learn and explore ways to help to address the issue faced by teachers in Asian Pacific region, including my own country, our Cambodia.
វត្តមានរបស់ឯកឧត្តមលោកជំទាវអស់លោកស្រីនៅលើទឹកដីអង្គរនេះពិតជាសំខាន់ជំរុញឲ្យលើកកម្ពស់ឲ្យកម្ពុជាដើរតាមគន្លងប្រជាធិបតេយ្យនិងការគោរពសិទ្ធិមនុស្សពេញលេញនិងប្រព័ន្ធអប់រំប្រសើរឡើង
The keyword in CETA name is independent. Our independent thinking, action have led Cambodian authority treat us as an unfair, undemocratic and hostile manners. They have persistently violate our human rights and freedom of speech while claiming they uphold them.
ក្នុងឱកាសវិសេសវិសាលនេះនាងខ្ញុំសូមជម្រាបរំលឹកជូនអង្គសន្និសីទអំពីស្ថានភាពនៅកម្ពុជាសង្ខេបខ្លីៗនិងផលវិបាករបស់សមាគមគ្រូបង្រៀនកម្ពុជាឯករាជ្យបាននឹងកំពុងប្រឈមដូចតទៅ
So in January 2018, 11 CETA members were deregistered from public service register, including CETA President Mr. Rongchun.
ការធ្លាក់ចុះលទ្ធិប្រជាធិបតេយ្យនិងស្ថានភាពសិទ្ធិមនុស្សកាន់តែធ្ងន់ធ្ងរបន្ទាប់ពីរាជរដ្ឋាភិបាលប្រើប្រាស់ប្រព័ន្ធតុលាការប្រកាសរំលាយគណៈបកប្រឆាំងគណៈបកគឺជាគណៈបកសង្គ្រោះជាតិយ៉ាងអយុត្តិធម៌កាលពីថ្ងៃទី16ខែវិច្ឆិកាឆ្នាំ2017ហើយបានរឹបអូសអាសនៈទាំង55របស់រដ្ឋសភានិងអាសនៈក្រុមប្រឹក្សាឃុំសង្កាត់ចំនួន5700 5007អាសនៈពីគណៈបកប្រឆាំងទាំងអស់
Since the mid-2020, 5 CETA teachers have been jailed on politically motivated charge, and Mr. Rongchun again was arrested in July 2020 and jailed for 15 months and 12 days for transporting workers to the public protest and exercising his right to free of speech. He is now still on probation with the traveling ban and ridiculous punitive damage hang over his head.
កាលពីខែមករាឆ្នាំ2018សមាជិក11រូបរបស់សមាគមគ្រូបង្រៀនកម្ពុជាឯករាជ្យត្រូវបានក្រសួងអប់រំយុវជននិងកីឡាលុបឈ្មោះចេញពីក្របខ័ណ្ឌការងាររបស់ពួកគាត់យ៉ាងអយុត្តិធម៌ក្នុងនោះមានលោករងឈុនប្រធានសហភាពសហជីពកម្ពុជាជាទីប្រឹក្សារបស់សមាគមគ្រូបង្រៀនកម្ពុជាឯករាជ្យ
In January 2018, 11 CETA teachers members were deregistered from the public service registers, including CETA advisor Mr. Rongchun.
ហើយសមាជិក5រូបទៀតនៃសមាគមគ្រូបង្រៀនកម្ពុជាឯករាជ្យត្រូវបានរងការចោទប្រកាន់អយុត្តិធម៌ចំពោះពួកគាត់ហើយយកគាត់ទៅដាក់ក្នុងពន្ធនាគារនៅពាក់កណ្ដាលឆ្នាំ2000រហូតដល់បច្ចុប្បន្ននេះកាលពីថ្ងៃទី31ខែកក្កដាឆ្នាំ2020លោករងឈុនត្រូវបានរាជរដ្ឋាភិបាលកម្ពុជាចោទប្រកាន់និងចាប់ដាក់ពន្ធនាគារយ៉ាងអយុត្តិធម៌ចំនួន15ខែ12ថ្ងៃបន្ទាប់ពីការដោះលែងលោកនៅស្ថិតក្រោមបម្រាមរបស់តុលាការក្រុងភ្នំពេញដដែលរហូតដល់សប្តាហ៍ថ្ងៃនេះ
Since mid-2020, 5 teacher members have been jailed on political motivated charge, and Mr. Rongchun was again arrested and jailed for 15 months, 12 days, and for transporting the worker to the public protest and exercise the freedom of speech. He is now still under the probation for the traveling ban and ridiculous punitive damage hangovers his head.
សូមគោរពអង្គសន្និសីទជាទីគោរពក្នុងករណីរបស់នាងខ្ញុំក៏ត្រូវបានគេប៉ុនប៉ងសម្លាប់និងបង្កគ្រោះថ្នាក់ចរាចរណ៍របួសធ្ងន់ដែលជាចេតនារបស់អ្នកនយោបាយមានអំណាចពីកាលពីឆ្នាំ2020ដូចគ្នាកន្លងទៅក្នុងយុទ្ធនាការរបស់សមាគមគ្រូបង្រៀនកម្ពុជាឯករាជ្យជាមួយក្រុមយុវជននិងសកម្មជនដើម្បីទាមទារឲ្យរាជរដ្ឋាភិបាលតុលាការក្រុងភ្នំពេញផ្ដល់យុត្តិធម៌ជូនលោករងឈុននិងដោះលែងរូបគាត់ហើយនិងសកម្មជនដទៃទៀត
As an apparent murder attempt was made on my life after leading the protest to demand release of the jail CETA members. I was pushed down from the motorcycle from behind. I sustained several injuries on my face, arm, leg, requiring several stitches around my eye, mouth. Injury healed for a couple of weeks, but I continue to suffer forgetfulness more often than ever.
នៅថ្ងៃនេះសមាជិករបស់សមាគមគ្រូបង្រៀនកម្ពុជាឯករាជ្យនៅតាមបណ្ដាខេត្តក្រុងនានារងការគំរាមកំហែងបំផិតបំភ័យនិងបំបាក់ស្មារតីតាមសាលាតែម្ដង
It is not only me and Rongchun, many members of our union throughout the country face in intimidation and persecution and live in fear.
មកដល់ពេលបច្ចុប្បន្ននេះក្រសួងនិងស្ថាប័នពាក់ព័ន្ធនានានៃរាជរដ្ឋាភិបាលកម្ពុជានៅតែរើសអើងសមាគមគ្រូបង្រៀនកម្ពុជាឯករាជ្យទោះបីសមាគមយើងព្យាយាមសុំជួបពិភាក្សាជាមួយមន្ត្រីក្រសួងអប់រំស្ថាប័នពាក់ព័ន្ធទាំងនោះក៏ត្រូវបានពួកគេបដិសេធចំពោះការជួបជុំគ្នាសមាជិកនឹងត្រូវបានគេរដ្ឋបတ်ហើយសមាជិករបស់សមាគមនៅតែរងការបំផិតបំភ័យនិងការគំរាមកំហែងស្មារតីដដែល
Such the things are so bad yesterday. We were not allowed to by the hotel management to post the 3 banner at the foyer outside this hall. The authority usually refuse permission that we require to hold our own internal meetings. សូមគោរពអង្គសន្និសីទគោរពជាទីគោរព
ពួកយើងត្រូវបដិសេធនៅរាល់សិទ្ធិប្រមូលផ្ដុំជាមូលដ្ឋានយើងស្នើឲ្យអង្គសន្និសីទដើម្បីរកវិធីជួយអន្តរាគមន៍នៅចំណុចដូចខាងក្រោម 1. សេរីភាពនៃការចរចាប្រកបដោយប្រសិទ្ធភាពរវាងអាជ្ញាធរកម្ពុជាជាមួយសមាគមគ្រូបរិញ្ញាបត្រកម្ពុជាឯករាជ្យ 2. ផ្ដល់ក្របខ័ណ្ឌជូនសមាជិកសមាគមគ្រូបង្រៀនកម្ពុជាឯករាជ្យទាំង11នាក់ឡើងវិញនិងដោះលែងលោកគ្រូទាំង5នាក់ឲ្យមានសេរីភាពឡើងវិញ 3. ដកបំរាមនិងសំណងជូនលោកគ្រូរងឈុន
We are denied the basic right to organize. We request the conference to explore the way to ensure the following in Cambodia. Civil and effective communication between the authority and Cambodia Independent Teacher Association to resolve the issues. Reinstatement of the 11 CETA members in public service and release the 5 jail teachers and removal of the travel ban and punitive damage imposed on Mr. Rongchun.
ជាទីបញ្ចប់យើងខ្ញុំមានសង្ឃឹមថាការប្រព្រឹត្តទៅរបស់សន្និសីទរយៈពេល3ថ្ងៃនៅទីក្រុងសៀមរាបនៃរមណីយដ្ឋានទេសចរអង្គរនៃនេះទទួលបានជោគជ័យនិងរួមចំណែកក្នុងការជំរុញកែលម្អលើកកម្ពស់សេរីភាពអង្គការសមាគមសេរីភាពសហជីពនិងសេរីនិងសិទ្ធិមនុស្សលទ្ធិប្រជាធិបតេយ្យពេញលេញនៅកម្ពុជានាងខ្ញុំសូមជូនពរឯកឧត្តមលោកជំទាវអស់លោកស្រីទទួលនៅពុទ្ធពរទាំង4ប្រការអាយុវណ្ណៈសុខៈពលៈកំបីឃ្លៀងឃ្លាតឡើយសូមអរគុណ
We wish the conference a huge success. And after the conference, do not forget to explore the historical city Siem Reap. Siem Reap is the historical city and the gateway to Angkor, the capital of Khmer Kingdom from 9th to 15th century. I invite you all to visit the ruin Angkor Wat and enjoy the temple nearby, including Angkor Wat, which is in the Cambodian flag. Thank you. Enjoy conference. Enjoy Siem Reap. Have a safe stay.
Thank you, Sister Ok Chayafi, for your warm welcome to Cambodia and for the fearless work you and CETA are doing in protecting rights of teachers and unionists in Cambodia. It is now my pleasure to invite Mr. Graham Buckley, is the Director of ILO Decent Work Team for East and Southeast Asia and the Pacific, on stage for his message.
Thank you very much. As was introduced, I am in charge of our sub-regional office in the ILO based in Bangkok, but I'm also the country director for the ILO for Cambodia, for Thailand and Lao PDR. So very familiar with many of the challenges we face here in Cambodia with regards to freedom of association and the right to collective bargaining, not just for teachers but in general in the country. So very sobering message there, but a very real one, a very, very pertinent one. Chairperson, Mr. Masaki Okajima, honourable guest speakers, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it's a very great pleasure for me to be here today to have the opportunity to join you at this very important conference. I would like to convey at the outset warm greetings from the regional director, Ms. Chihoko Asada Miyakawa, who unfortunately is not able to be with us today, hence you've got me. Although I am not as intimately involved in the teaching profession myself as all of you are and all of the previous speakers are, I do claim to come from a teaching family. My wife has been a teacher for almost 30 years now, and my son has followed in her footsteps and was recently qualified as a teacher in the UK last year. So I do hear a lot about the profession, and I've got a reasonable awareness of many of the issues and the challenges facing teachers around the world. But back to my remarks. Since its inception, the ILO, as you all know, has stood for social justice and has always placed training and education as a priority policy for driving changes in the world of work. The ILO also recognizes the crucial role that the teaching and educational professionals have played in leading the illumination of society and advancing democracy and well-being. As most of you will know, I'm sure, the ILO, together with UNESCO and other partner organizations across the globe, has continued to celebrate World Teachers' Day on the 5th of October to advocate the significance of education and address the rights and welfare of teachers. And as you probably might not know, just 2 days later, on October the 7th, we have Decent Work Day. Furthermore, the Committee of Experts on the application of the recommendations concerning teaching personnel was jointly established by the ILO and UNESCO, comprising experts on education, teaching and labour from around the world. The committee promotes and monitors the application of 2 recommendations: the ILO UNESCO recommendation concerning the status of teachers from 1966 and the UNESCO recommendation concerning the status of higher education teaching personnel from 1997. The committee has examined many cases of allegations violating labour rights of teachers in member states and made recommendations for the resolution of the cases. Over the years, as we've also heard, ILO in Asia Pacific in particular, but ILO in general, has collaborated with EI and EI Asia Pacific in particular, including on a joint survey on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on teaching and education sectors. And there has been collaboration and engagement on several events and on several fronts throughout recent years. And I would very much encourage further collaboration, particularly in this region. Dear colleagues, the COVID pandemic has brought great impacts on every corner of our life, our work, business and society. Among these many impacts, it has triggered a transformation in work towards, as we've heard, digitization, automation and adoption of advanced technologies in the world of work. This has resulted in certain sectors growing fast while others have faced numerous challenges. Digital technologies are also obviously revolutionizing education and teaching. Digital learning and teaching have become a new normal in schools and society. This is an innovation that's connecting people and sharing knowledge and ideas. The ILO has also transformed its education and training program from a physical to a virtual modality. The International Training Center, the ILO's training center based in Turin in Italy, has continued to transform itself over recent years into an innovative digital learning and service provider. In 2020, 95% of the center's training activities was conducted by distance learning and only 5% by face-to-face training. Obviously, this is a reflection of the COVID situation, but it's an indicator of things to come, I suspect. The online training, of course, is less costly and potentially benefits more people, increasing the participants from around 22,000 overall in 2019 to around 36,000 in 2020. For post-compulsory education, this trend is probably likely to become the norm in the future. However, the transformation of education has often caused an adverse impact on the rights, the well-being and job security of teachers and those in the profession. We see the need for teachers to get support for professional learning and capacity building for keeping their jobs or transitioning to a new type of work or new job. In this regard, teachers will need to get training, retraining and upskilling to update new ways of learning, knowledge and skills. And this will help teachers to enhance their resilience and adaptability in an evolving environment. Well-trained and truly motivated teachers will, as we've heard, better educate our children and make them innovative and creative as well. But in 2019, at its centenary celebration, the ILO adopted the Centenary Declaration for the Future of Work. The declaration recommends investment in people's capabilities through skills and lifelong learning in order to gain and sustain employability. ILO strongly stresses the importance of skills development and lifelong learning for all. We are, as you know, a tripartite organization, and we have observed, as we've heard today, this morning, that in many places rights have been eroded or voices confronted in ways that are not constructive and not conducive to social dialogue and to rights in the world of work. That is where union action is critical for putting teachers at the centre of transformative education, as well as putting other policies in measures, but critical also to defend the rights of workers. How trade unions respond to the challenges and the changes will determine the future of education. Trade unions will also need to renew their services and campaign strategies to reach out to non-organised teaching staff. Of course, this is an ongoing activity. And developing new communication tools and mechanisms will become increasingly necessary to connect union members and to empower them. More investment in teaching infrastructure is also needed to create an environment of lifelong learning opportunities where teachers can continue to develop their competencies and qualifications. Social dialogue is key to guarantee the democratic participation of trade unions in policy making and decision making, and to design an overall master plan of future education collectively in each country. Education is a source of resilience, innovation, creativity, and adaptability. A brighter future of education will sow a seed for nurturing a brighter future for the world of work. In closing, I would like to take the opportunity to reiterate that the ILO is committed to promoting the rights and welfare of all teachers and education professionals. As we heard, the UN Sustainable Development Goal number 4 aims to achieve inclusive and equitable quality education by 2030. That's not far away. To achieve SDG 4, we all need to enhance national, regional, and global partnerships among multi-stakeholders while promoting South-South cooperation and public-private collaboration. We greatly value our collaboration with Education International in promoting SDG 4 and decent work in education and teaching more generally. With my very good wishes for a successful conference, I would like to congratulate all new committee members in advance who will be elected at this end of the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Graham Buckley, for your message to this conference, and we look forward to continue working with ILO to advocate the decent work agenda for the teachers and working people on the region. We are now welcome Dr. Ethel Pasqua Valenzuela, the Director of the Southeast Asian Minister of Education's Organization Secretariat, for her remarks. Unfortunately, she could not be with us in person today, so she has sent us a video message.
UNESCO estimated that 24 million learners school closure, lockdowns, economic problems, and health crisis we are still facing. We also need to accelerate efforts towards learning recovery to minimize the impacts of these disruptions. However, we also have to recognize a lot of gains and the silver lining and lessons we have learned during the period of pandemic. Distance learning has been implemented across different countries. Flexible learning, blended, hybrid, whatever you call it, a variety of modalities whereby we reach our learners, whatever is appropriate and fits at the context. We learned that there is a need to create supporting ecosystems to promote these modalities. We further underscored the need for holistic support to our learners. And most importantly, this propelled us to realize the urgent call to reimagine and transform education systems. The first response to bring our children and youth back to school while strengthening gains we have made in distance learning is to make education systems more resilient to disruptions. Teachers and educators face challenges in ensuring learning continuity during the pandemic. Teachers' competency in ICT and maximizing this to improve learning delivery is a major concern. There are also various challenges faced by our teachers during this pandemic, such as the immediate shift and adjustment to remote learning. Teacher trainings, access to internet, mobile data, and other resources. New and unfamiliar technology which were introduced during this time. So while countries have made significant strides and gains in ensuring the professional development of our teachers at this time, we have to rethink and reframe teacher competency standards once more to be able to develop a more strategic training program for them. This is especially true on the use of ICT and remote and distance teaching pedagogies. This is also in preparation not just for pandemic, but for future disruptions. Teachers need to be supported in the development of quality distance education, as well as their own professional development. Teachers must have the right knowledge, competencies, skills, and values to allow them to reach out to all the learners, especially in these difficult times. Another context we're experiencing is climate change and climate crisis. UNICEF stated that climate crisis will affect the most vulnerable children, teachers, adolescents, exacerbating again inequalities and undermining the progress we have achieved. Thus, in the report of UNICEF, it underscored that climate crisis is also our education crisis. That education is also the main solution. The pandemic and the challenges brought about by climate change have highlighted some emerging imperatives, enhancing capacities of teachers and key education enablers, fostering a learning environment that is quick to respond to disruption, and sustaining the development and advancement of learning resources to help the teachers. Educators should think and reflect on the best approach or strategy that will fit local contexts and operationalize all the protocols, the process of deeping dive into the solutions and innovations, selecting which will work best in that particular school. Moreover, never before have we felt the need to work together to achieve the common goal. So by amplifying the strengths of all the teachers and through collective and strategic partnership, teachers can confidently triumph all the difficulties. Some countries, they have teacher unions, teacher associations, and professional associations. This should be considered seriously. In a positive lens, although disruptions have severely tested the resilience and adaptability of school teachers, all of this network of professionals and teachers have been very strong all throughout the pandemic. We should take advantage of this opportunity to strengthen the teachers, their competencies, their capacity to adjust to the changes, and school leaders who are considered the education frontliners. In order to move towards resilience and sustainability, teachers and school heads both must be supported. For CBO, in the next 10 years, we have laid down our priority areas in education in science and culture. We have also identified 574 programs that are meant to capacitate the teachers, school leaders, and personnel through our 26 centers and network, including supporting our learners, our children, youth, and citizens from early childhood higher education. These priority areas will also serve as a guide to strengthen our partnerships and forge new ones. In the recently concluded Transforming Education Summit in New York City, US, a 3-day summit is a response to education crisis we are experiencing. The thematic action tracks are on promoting inclusive, equitable, safe, and healthy schools. Second, learning and skills for life, work and sustainable development. Third, teachers teaching and teaching profession. Fourth, digital learning and transformation. And fifth, financing of education. To achieve this, we must work together and support our teachers and our educators, as they are the facilitators of learning. We must empower them to bring forward relevant issues while ensuring that they are supported well. To know more about the recommendations, reflections, and ideas at CBO Congress on Transforming Education Summit, our partners have all worked together to build back better. You can scan the QR code on many ideas on transforming education, teachers, education leaders, because we are all at the forefront of this quest, and we're here to support the hearts of the education system. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and may you have a productive conference ahead.
Thank you for the message, Dr. Ethel Pasqua Valenzuela. And now it is my pleasure to invite Brother Soya Yoshida, the General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation's Asia Pacific ITUC-AP, for his solidarity greetings. ITUC-AP, which represent over 60 million members of 59 national trade union centers in 34 countries and territories in Asia Pacific region, and strives for economic, social, and political justice, in short, decent work through trade union action.
Thank you, Sister. Delegate, leaders and officers of the EI and EIAP, distinguished guests, and dear friend, I'd like to congratulate Education International on the occasion of organizing its 9th Asia Pacific Regional Conference. Today, I must begin with a message for peace. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is still continuing. Our heartfelt condolences are with the victims of the war and their families. We pray that, following this difficult situation, their lives and those of their loved ones will return to normal as soon as possible. Léon Jouot, a French trade unionist who received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1951, said in his Nobel lecture, "Not only does war kill workers, destroy homes and factories, which took them centuries of effort to cultivate, but it also gives a man an increasingly acute feeling of his hopelessness before the forces of violence, and consequently severely retards his progress toward an age of peace, justice, well-being." The meaning of this word deeply resonate now with us. War does not benefit anyone, but only those that initiate it. Everyone, we all aspire for decent work, quality education, quality social services, and universal social protection. Please imagine if only a small part of the budget used for armaments and military spending were rather used to introduce and implement social reforms. Many people would live more prosperous lives, and a more just society could have been created, a society free from intimidation and violence. Why do leaders fail to promote people-centered policies? For many years, political power has been concentrated on the elite, who are either heavily influenced by the corporations and wealthy, or part of the economic and financial sectors themselves. As a result, both the political and economic systems are designed in favor of wealthy and big corporations. Globalizations not only failed to reinforce workers' competitiveness, but also weakened their influence in global and national decision-making. Most leaders prefer to surround themselves with opinions that validate their beliefs and ignore opposing voices. For them, a working democracy that unites people's voices is a threat to their tight grip of political power. Thus, leaders and their government continue to shut down trade unions, which are crucial mouthpiece of democracy. In Hong Kong, immensely pressured by the crackdown carried out by the authorities, our fellow trade unions took the decision to disband. Meanwhile, the people of Myanmar were continuously overwhelmed by the military with barbaric attacks, as they were about to welcome a democratic government. In Afghanistan, the Taliban once again imposed restrictions on people and snuffed out an emerging democratic society. Many countries, such as India, Indonesia, and many others, have introduced neoliberal policies that deprive workers of their rights they have secured over many decades. However, despite the crackdown and the shrinking democratic space for organizing, workers and their trade unions are not giving up. Trade unions throughout our history have been constantly fighting for dignity in the workplace and for social justice for all. We have been standing up for workers' rights, marching and demanding for a minimum living wage, a maximum limit on working hours, health and safety at work, freedom of association, and right to collective bargaining. Now is the time to negotiate a new social contract by placing the people and the work they do at the center of development. All stakeholders should take responsibility for building a just and equitable future of work and ensure greater investment in people's capability and decent job creation. In order to realize the new social contract, an overwhelming majority of the people must regain their influence to be able to rewrite the rules of capitalism and the rules of politics. Realizing a new social contract requires building and consolidating workers' power to collectively advance our demand and challenge the prevailing neoliberal and undemocratic economic and political order. So we must rebuild a countervailing force to gain a stronger bargaining power in the negotiation of a new social contract. To this end, trade unions have to continue, of course, our traditional effort of organizing more workers into trade unions, strengthening their representativeness of workers and ensuring that they represent a cross-section of society. At the same time, trade unions must go beyond traditional trade unionism and must have a potential to work with various stakeholders in society who place the greatest emphasis on decent work. Such stakeholders may include freelance artists, writers, and journalists who have not received any protection during the pandemic, university graduates who have been involuntarily engaged in precarious employment, subcontracted small and medium enterprises suffering from the abuse of major companies' dominant bargaining positions, and many others. Then EI should play a crucial role. Working conditions in your sector are directly linked to the quality of education, and therefore, collective bargaining of yours can represent the interests of not only teachers and teaching personnel, but also students, children, future generation, and society as whole. In other words, people-centered, sustainable, inclusive, resilient development is not possible without ensuring freedom of association and right to collective bargaining for teachers. So let us build solidarity and march forward unitedly toward changing the rules in favor of the people and the planet, and achieving a better, just, and peaceful world. Thank you very much.
Brother Soria, thank you very much for your message and also for your leaderships of the workers in the regions. Brother and sister, now we are in the closure of our opening ceremony. So we would like to say thank you very much for all the distinguished speakers. And let me say goodbye to the online viewer. We'll be having our coffee break and resume back to this conference room at 11 o'clock. Enjoy your morning coffee and see you back at 11 o'clock. Thank you.